Do you want an easier way to complete your I-cord bind-offs? I'm going to explore how to use the Icord tool to finish off a project. It's also yarn crawl season, so we're going to talk about the Rose City yarn crawl and springtime projects. Hey Sugar Snaps, if you're new to the channel, my name is Brittany. Here we talk about fiber and traditional crafts. If you're an old friend, welcome in. Cozy up with your favorite beverage and your work in progress, and let's have some crafty time together. Last weekend was the Rose City Yarn Crawl. Sherry and I did 7 of the shops on Thursday, which was the opening day of the crawl, and it was a great journey exploring the different shops. I hadn't been to all of them, even though they're in my area, and seeing the different trunks shows featured. And then on Friday, Bailey and I finished the last 3. So I wanted to talk through some of the shops and then show you what I purchased on my journey. Before we dive into that, I wanted to invite you to join our email update list. You'll get access to our free VIP printables library where we have workbooks, worksheets, cheat sheets, and other goodies that you can print out to support your fiber and traditional craft efforts. So use the link in the description below or this QR code to sign up for our email list to get access to that. Our first stop was the Naughty Lamb in Forest Grove. Even starting the first day of the crawl at opening time, the shop was jam-packed. We got our stamp and the shop's button. I don't know if they do this every year, but they handed out a little button. Each shop had a different design for a button. It was fun building those up. I had a crossbody bag on, and so I pinned them to the strap, and it started to feel like a merit badge, like Girl Scout banner thing as I built the different shops up, each button growing my collection. From there, we traveled over to For Yarn's Sake, and this was the largest shop on the crawl. The displays in yarns were really beautiful, and I got to see Wonderland Fibers, their blossoms. They have yarn, they call them blossoms, which are kind of a variegation of color. And I've been working with Frabjous Fiber, which is their fiber brand, and been working with that wool for about a year now. So it was fun to see their yarn out in the wild. Next up was the Green Tree Crochet. This cute little shop was featuring a collection of sticker artists, or artists that had a collection of stickers, and I found this really cute camping themed sticker with yarn as the moon. And since backpacking and fiber arts are 2 of my favorite activities, having this sticker was just meant to be. Northwest Wools in a cozy small house style building was up next. They were packed with yarns, and they also had roving, and I think this was the only place on the circuit that had dyed roving for sale. We then traveled over to Ritual Dyes and Fiber Rhythm, which was just kind of a block apart, so we got to stop in at both of those. Ritual Dyes had several trunk shows going on, and it was fun seeing the juxtaposition of a dyer that went all out on the kind of brights and funky neon colors, and then one that went more with they weren't exactly pastels, but kind of hand painted, I guess calmer colors. So having the juxtaposition of the 2 was fun to see. Then we took a break to stop for lunch and kind of rest. It was like 2 o'clock at this point, so we were starting to not be able to finish our sentences. So we grabbed lunch and then finished the day off with the Starlight Knitting Society. This location is in a large open space, and they have set up a comfortable looking seating area next to the fireplace that made me want to sit down and work on a project right away. I picked up the Icord tool here. I had been looking at it online and thought this was a good opportunity to pick it up because I'm going to be finishing off a project with Icord binding. So wanted to try that out to see if it was a little bit easier, and I'll be sharing that later in this video. On the following day, I picked up the yarn crawl at Close Knit, which was really cute. Another jam-packed small little yarn shop with lots of different yarns, lots of different textures, and again, so many things to see. It was hard to take it all in. And the last 2 shops on the crawl took us further north, closer to home. So next up was Weird Sisters, which is also a bookstore, Twin Rivers bookstore. So part yarn shop, part bookstore, which was really fun. They were having several trunk shows as well, and a vintage button seller was there, so there was a ton of beautiful vintage buttons. We ended the crawl with Hook and Needle, which is my local knitting shop. I love this little shop. It's really well lit, and the owners, Rachel and Kelly, had done a wonderful job curating the items in the shop and arranging it so that it flows really nicely and everything is just really beautiful and eye-catching. It feels very calming when you walk in there. Although on crawl day, I'm sure it wasn't super calming because it was very well packed with knitters and crocheters. I hope that continued for their sake. But also, I'm sure all of the yarn shop owners and workers over that week were exhausted. So if you work at a yarn shop and you do a yarn crawl, thank you for what you do. It's really fun as a knitter and crocheter getting to explore yarn shops and all the featured trunk shows and all of that. So it was a really fun journey. I really wanted to support Hook and Needle, so I stopped in there for a couple items and also to explore their trunk shows. I have some Salty Blonde Fine Fibers yarn that I purchased and another couple goodies. Hook and Needle was featuring Salty Blonde Fine Fibers, and I just fell in love with the colors that she had represented and her hand-dyed fibers that were multiple colors. And I don't typically, or I haven't gravitated towards knitting with multicolored skeins or yarn that has lots of speckling and that kind of thing because it's not really, I don't typically wear that, so I wouldn't turn it into a garment necessarily. But I fell in love with several of her colors. They're a variety of different shades of the same color with some speckles of something that's slightly contrasting. I fell in love with them and I was like, how could I turn this into something that I would actually wear? Because I'm more on the side of making garments right now than I am any other sorts of things. And so I was thinking about it, you know, this is all on the fly. And sometimes it's hard to make decisions while you're in the middle of the store, especially during a yarn crawl. So I kind of tried to plan ahead some projects that I wanted to do, but I wasn't seeing the yarn for those projects. I was seeing this yarn. So I was like, what could I make with this yarn that I would actually wear? And they had this cute striped knit sweater on their dress form at the end of the table. And I was like, that's it. I'll use these colorful colors as the stripes because they were like fine stripes throughout the body of the sweater. Use the color as the stripes and then do a background in a creamy neutral so that I could still wear it as a neutral and not just be a splash of color and have some design in it and something interesting to knit. So I did end up purchasing some of Salty Blonde's yarn and I'm really excited to knit it up. I almost started this project and then pulled all my other unfinished projects and was like, yeah, I'm also excited about these. So I'm going to set this aside probably for an April project or maybe a little bit later because I have some other things lined up that I wanted to work on. But I want to show you all of the things that I purchased on the crawl. So I stashed them in this basket. This actually, I wanted to mention that this basket is going to be going into the Textile Indie Collective as an online workshop. If you're interested in making a melon basket, the style with a woven handle, I did a full tutorial on that and it will be launched in the collective in the next month or two. Okay, so for what I got, Salty Blonde, I got this pink yarn. It's got gold flecks in it, little black or brown spots in it. This is called No Judge of Beauty. That's the colorway. This is a worsted yarn, 100% merino. And then I also got this tealy green, and this has little brown kind of purpley specks as well. This one's Elizabeth, also worsted, also 100% merino. So Salty Blonde, Fine Fibers, her yarns are beautiful. Follow her on Instagram, she does great work. This I want to use and do alternating stripes in a sweater. I just got two because that's what I had the budget for, but we'll see if I can incorporate that into some sort of project. And then this is the sticker that I got at Green Tree Crochet. Isn't that cute? Little tent in a campsite. Just reminded me of backpacking, and this year I want to do some backpacking where I take a knitting project or some sort of small project with me. It seems like the sacrifice of carrying that weight for tens of miles will be worth it to have something to work on and enjoy in the evening. So this was really a fun sticker to grab. Then at Close Knit, I got this. This is a 50-50 blend of cotton and wool. And I've been wanting to try that blend because the properties of wool, which I love, and the properties of cotton, which are great too, I wanted to see them combined and feel what it was like to knit that up and have a garment made out of this. So I got 3 balls of this to do some sort of summery top. And the reason I wanted to try this blend was that I love wool. I love the features of wool, that it's antimicrobial. It works well in hot climates and cool climates because it helps cool you off, but it also keeps you insulated and warm. So that combo, but it can get a little bit too warm if it's a really hot summer because there is kind of that fuzzy texture that insulates more than a cotton would. It's also well, it's antimicrobial, so it doesn't stink. And in the summer, that can be an issue. So I wanted to pair that with cotton, which is also warm, but it can be more cooling. It absorbs more perspiration and so cools you down more quickly than wool would. It's also cozy, it's nice and soft, and so there's that feature of cotton. So having the two combined, and this is kind of a heathered yarn. There's little tiny flecks of purple in here, and overall it's kind of a navy cream color. At Hook and Needle, I also got these adorable knitting needle point protectors. This is the Hook and Needle logo, the little hedgehog, and it's just adorable. Very, very cute. And these are created by Kama Craft Co., Knitting Notions and Other Good Stuff. Out of Sacramento, California. These were adorable. There was a lot of different designs and she has a lot of different shapes and styles. I also picked up a Coco Knits Maker's Keep. This caught my eye because just the other day I was sewing and I was thinking, man, it would be really nice to have something to hold my pins while I go back and forth, like attached to me so that I'm not losing my pins from one table to the sewing machine and back. So this Maker's Keep, it's a snap bracelet. It's a little tricky to get on sometimes. It's a snap bracelet, but it's a magnet. So it can hold your stitch markers or your sewing pins, which is what I've used it for so far. But it's magnetic and it holds those things. Thought this would be really handy for a lot of different uses. So grab that while I was at Hook and Needle. And then at Starlight Society, I saw this Icord maker, and I've been eyeing this online for a while. I hadn't really had a reason to jump on it other than the fact that I have a knitting project that I'm in the middle of that I need to do Icord for. And Icord in knit fashion, if you're knitting it on needles, takes quite a while to do. So I wanted to see if this would speed up the process a little bit or just simplify it. This is all the things that I got on the yarn crawl. I was working on a tighter budget this time around. I've spent a lot of money on yarn this year for a lot of different projects, so kind of backed off a little bit, but I now am on the search for a fun striped sweater pattern or one that I can alter into having stripes to do with this yarn. This yarn is just so smooth and silky. It's merino wool, but it feels like it has some silk in it. I'm really excited to make this up into a project at some point. And this guy, turn this into something wearable for this summer would be pretty awesome. For now, I want to share some current makes. I've been chipping away at several different projects and thought I'd share them with you. First up, I have the April cardigan, which is a pattern by Petite Knits. This is coming along nicely. I'm almost worried that I'm doing something wrong because I've gotten to this point so easily, and for some reason I had the expectation that this was going to be a lot harder. But I have finished the challenging parts, at least the challenging parts for me. I have the shoulders in place, the sleeves are on stitch holders, ready to be finished off, and now I'm just knitting up the body. This is a back and forth cardigan, so I'm knitting it and stockinette stitch. So I'm to that point where it's just back and forth. Then I'll have the neckline or the collar. I think that's a rib to finish off, but this is knitting for Olive, soft silk mohair in a strand of merino. The fabric is really scrumptious and soft. This is the same combo I did for my cinema sweater a few months ago, and I really loved it and loved this color. So dove in once again with the same yarn combo. Another project I've been working on is washing a full Shetland sheep's fleece, After working through the fiber and sorting it, I did have a pile of waste from the second cut bits and places that were exceptionally dirty that I didn't want to clean. And these remnants I'm using in my dye garden as a rich source of nutrients. The rest I've cleaned and is all ready to go for carding. I am going to turn this into rolags, so I'm going to card them, turn them into rolags, and then spin them as a woolen yarn. If you've ever done a yarn where you've spun one strand as a woolen and one strand as a worsted and plied it together, let me know in the comments, because I'm thinking about doing that. The fuzzy softness of a woolen yarn, it adds extra warmth to a garment, but a worsted yarn has a lot more durability and longevity. And so I'm wondering if I combined it to cause problems and if the woolen would make the worsted weaker or how that would play out. I think I'm going to play around with some sampling of that and maybe knit up a swatch and throw it in my purse or something so I can play around with seeing how it wears in a high traffic kind of area. But if you have done that, I'd love to learn from your experience. So leave me a comment below, because I'd love to learn from you. I finished the contrast color spin that I'm making for the grid Gambit cowl I want to knit. So this is the contrast color. This will be the secondary color for the pattern. This is one strand of merino in the colorway teal, and then one strand in a high desert fiber that was dyed by Tumalo Fibers. This I did as a worsted yarn, and I shot to do it as a fingering weight yarn. It's somewhere between a fingering and a worsted size yarn, so it might not make up the pattern exactly. I'm going to have to play around with swatching and gauge and that kind of thing, but the yarn turned out pretty nice. I'm pretty pleased with it. It is reading gray from a distance. Up front you can see, or closer up, you can see a lot of different colors. I did want to turn the very autumnal color kind of palette of the fiber, the kind of orangey fiber, wanted to tone it down to more of a summer colorway by adding the teal. I don't think I achieved that exactly the way I intended, but I'm going to put it into the cowl because I think knitted up you'll see kind of the transition of colors, and it will be beautiful, even if it's not exactly what I was thinking. I have taken notes on the process and the color combination and that kind of thing so that I can learn from that and apply it in different ways for projects in the future. And then a project that has been sitting in a box for a very long time, and I mentioned this in a video several months or weeks ago, that I've taken up sewing garments again. I kind of took a prolonged break from doing that, even though I had piles and piles of things already cut out and ready to go. But I set aside time Monday afternoons to have about 2 hours that is garment sewing time. And my goal is to start developing a me-made wardrobe, both in knits and in hand-sewn garments. Not hand-sewn, but you know, I'm making them myself. So this is the Quince robe or jacket from Seamwork, and it's not complete. I have 2 layers here. I've got this layer in this burgundy and then another layer in this kind of mauve-y brown color. And what I'm going to do is make this a reversible garment. So I changed some pattern pieces. There's a cuff that on the original pattern would have been folded at the edge and then sewn into the jacket so that it was nice and finished, had a nice curved or folded cuff. And then the same thing for the neckline collar piece, neckband. That would have been folded, so you would have a nice folded edge here, and then it would finish to the inside. But this piece, I'm going to turn one of these inside out and then sew the whole garment together, kind of sandwich it together so that the layers end up being, come on, oh, this is pretty heavy. So it ends up being reversible. So I'll have pockets on the outside and then pockets on the inside, but I could take the whole thing off, turn it inside out, and wear it as a different color. The reason I wanted to do a double layer piece like this was I wanted the weight. I want to be able to wear this in the late fall and into the winter and have it feel like I'm wearing a blanket. And I was really inspired by Cantha quilts, which are quilts that are made out of recycled saris, and they're hand stitched together to kind of quilt two pieces of material together, and then a running stitch is embroidered into the material to kind of create that quilted look. And that texture I really love, and the feel of using a Cantha quilt. It's very cozy. And so I think what I'm going to do once I sew the whole piece together and it's reversible is take that running stitch idea and run some stitching along the neckband, so up the front and around, and then on the sleeve cuffs as well, and have it be a color that either matches or doesn't contrast too highly, so that it just sort of blends into the material. Doesn't stand out a ton, but has a nice texture and adds some dimension to the fabric. Because this is kind of a lot of burgundy or a lot of mauve, I want to break that up just a little bit to add some fun texture to it. It also will have little belt loops and then have a tie belt that you can wear. I haven't completely decided if I'm going to add that to this piece. I might do it on one side and not the other, but I need to decide on that. I'm probably going to be able to finish that this next week and show you the finished piece soon, but I wanted to show you where I'm at. My project for sewing this quarter is work on a blouse, a silk blouse. I think I've transitioned away from the silk part, and I might do a muslin blouse instead because I have that material on hand, and I'm considering a Sew Liberated pattern. They have a cute button-up top with kind of a rounded collar that I think I might do as my blouse pattern. And then I have this guy, which this has been sitting in my basket for coming up on, well, not quite a year, but I purchased this yarn on our trip to England, and this is hand dyed by a dyer in England, and I really loved the colors, so I want to finish this off. And this is the piece that needs the I-cord binding on the sleeve holes and the neckline. I'm doing the Italian bind off for the hem, so I want to finish this off before I get to the 1-year anniversary of our trip to Europe, which is coming up here in a few weeks, because I don't want it to sit there forever. And it's coming up on warmer weather here, and I want to be able to wear this. So I am putting this kind of forward on the project list and wanted to explore the I-cord binding with you later in this video. Okay, one more knit. This guy here. This is the beginning of the Love Letter top by Kudovekika. If you haven't noticed, I'm kind of obsessed with her knitting patterns right now. I just recently finished her cinema sweater. I made her Sailor Swift top, the striped version, on our trip to England last year. I'm making a second one without stripes here. It's the same pattern. I just eliminated the stripes and went with one color to use my colorful yarn. Anyway, I love her patterns. Her style is very fun. I love the yarn combinations that she puts together for her pieces and her colorways. So I've been very attracted by her patterns. And this is the upper back. Trying to make sure this doesn't fall off the needles. This is the upper back of the Love Letter top, which is a very lacy tank top, or yeah, sleeveless top. So I'm on to the third chart in this lace pattern, and this is my first experience using a knitting chart, and boy, is it giving me a run for my money. This section here had to take it out like 3 or 4 times because I kept reading the chart wrong, and so then screwing up the whole pattern. So I'm realizing the importance of attention to detail in knitting lace, because if you skip one thing, you're just offset just enough that it's going to mess you up. But I'm really enjoying the complexity of this pattern and getting to sit down and concentrate and focus on it. This is definitely not one that I sit down and watch a TV show while I'm doing. I kind of really still have to focus a lot on this knit. And I'm making it up in this fingering weight merino wool yarn. Another project this week has been cleaning up the garden in preparation for planting. I'm going to be planting a dye garden, so I wanted to clear away all the dead growth from last year. And in the fall, the birds were enjoying the seeds and the places to land so much that I decided I didn't want to clean it up, and I left it for the birds for the winter, which meant that I had a great winter watching black-capped chickadees and sparrows and other small songbirds playing in the garden. Which was pretty fun. So it was time though to clean that all up. So I went and did some trimming, and a lot of my perennials from last year came back, which is really exciting. We are going to have a pretty full garden already without me adding things. But I got some dye plants, and I wanted to open this with you. This is some seeds I ordered from Grand Prismatic Seeds. They have a lot of different dye plants in their seed collection, so I've been purchasing from them for a couple years now. I really have enjoyed their product and working with them. So I got some Japanese indigo, shades of gold marigolds, Dyer's coreopsis mix, red Reuben basil, which is not necessarily for dyeing, although they did have an example on their website of using this for plant pounding or eco-printing, so I thought that would be kind of fun to try. And then Grecian foxglove, which is also not a dye plant necessarily, but it's really pretty. It's like a foxglove, but in a creamy pinky color. So excited to see those come up. So Japanese indigo, marigolds, coreopsis, those are the three main ones that annual wise I'm going to plant this year. I have madder root in the garden from the last few years, and I collected seeds from the plants so that I could plant another rotation in from my own seeds. So I'll be planting another bed of madder root this year and harvesting my first bed, which is now almost 4 years old. So you can harvest at 3 years, but to get a root that has a good intensity of color. But I pushed it out to 4 years because we were busy last fall and I didn't have time to harvest. So here we are, 4 years into that dye bed. So I'll be harvesting that this summer or whenever I need to harvest it, I'm not sure. And then planting indigo, marigolds. I have black-eyed Susans already in the garden. Those came back from last year. So I can dye with those and some other plants that I can't think of at the moment. This video is sponsored by our membership, the Textile Indie Collective. This is a membership for fiber art dabblers who want to try all the things. Do you want to improve your mental health, explore new projects without the stress of having to piece together pieces of information? Do you want a community of folks to share your projects with and your love of making? The Textile Indie Collective is a growing library of fiber art and traditional craft tutorials with a built-in community where you can ask questions, chat with other makers, and share your finished projects. For more information, you can use this QR code or check the link in the description below. Now I want to figure out how to use, where'd it go? This tool, oh no, I'm tangled up. This tool to create an I-cord I-cord bind off on this guy. So I've got some setting up to do and figuring out how to get this attached. So this guy here, this is called the Cordsmith. It has what are basically latch hooks. So this little arm comes up, hits the hook and holds the strand in that space while another loop can flow over the end and drop. So there's 3 of these hooks with these little arms, and this is called a Cordsmith, and it's was designed by a gal named Autumn Eden Goodman, and you can find her stuff on her website by Autumn. This is actually the mini. I didn't realize there were sizing restraints when I purchased this. This is the mini, and I looked it up, and this is best for lace weight and smaller or finer yarns. So not great for the size yarn that I'm using here, which is fingering weight yarn, but I went ahead and used it on the neckline, and this is going to need a lot of blocking to make it kind of stretch out and look good, but I did want to kind of tighten up the neckline anyway, so decided to go for that. It is a little bit challenging to use the mini as a fingering weight yarn tool, so I definitely in the future would use something or use the general use size, and I did just order one from Autumn that's the larger size, but I'm going to do the sleeves of this guy in the same with this mini because now it will match. So I've picked up my stitches here on the sleeve, and I watched a tutorial, quick tutorial on how to get this started because I was sitting here looking at it and having some brain numbness trying to figure out how to get this going. So the video I watched, I'll link in the description below if you want a more full tutorial. But the way to get started here is to take your first hook and send it between the first and second stitch on your knitting needle, and then grab a loop of yarn. And the yarn that I'm working with, I've added the stitches for the armhole, and it's coming around from the right hand side. So I'm going to grab this loop, pull this loop through, so I have a loop on my needle, like so, and I'm going to leave this stitch on the knitting needle for now, and then create a backwards loop cast on to loop over the second, and then the same for the third. Loop that over. And now what I found when I was doing the neckline is that the tightness of your yarn really will impact how hard this is to pull through. So I'm going to come around from the back and loop over the hooks. Now don't press on these little nubbins that are going to slide up because you want that to be able to move up and then pull through and then off. This took me quite a while to figure out how to get that tension right, so I practiced quite a few times before I was able to get that to work smoothly, but having it sit nice and loose and then pulling it through, and you want to be pretty decisive because otherwise the loops catch on the teeth of the little hooks. So now I've done 2 loops free. I'm going to catch this first knitted loop onto the first hook. And these guys like to split the yarn, so catch that on there and then loop the yarn from the back across the front, catch it in the loops and pull the loops that are on the hooks off, like so. And then because this is such a tight small stitch, I did a stitch in between in order to make enough space. So I'm going to catch my next loop off my needle, and I put it on the cord smith, so I have 2 loops here on this first cord smith latch. I'll loop over loosely, catch it in the eyes, and then pull through, and then do 1 in between, pull through, and then catch the next loop, yarn over, pull this through, do a loop in between, and then catch the next loop. And I'm getting to the point where I have enough I can show you what this starts to look like. Oops, forgot to drop that. So here is my little I-cord edge, like so. This blunt end, I will be able to attach this other end to it with the tapestry needle once I go all the way around, and I did that on the neckline. So I attach the two together here. Again, it's not super clean because this beginning, especially on the neckline, was super tight. So it's a little bit fudged, but not too bad. I definitely would suggest checking the sizes on the cordsmith before you use it to make sure that you're using the right size for the yarn you're working with. Well, I figured out how to use the cordsmith even though the size is too small. So I am looking forward to using this technique in the future because I really like the Icord edge, and this made it probably twice as fast, if not faster, to do the Icord edge on my tank top. So here's the neckband edge. Again, it's pretty tight. I need to wash it and block it to get that to lay flat. But the armhole edge is coming on. I just have this little bit done. Just spent a few minutes working on it. Looking forward to getting the regular size. This is the mini again, but the regular size, and trying that out. When I was watching other videos, the stitches should be relatively the same as your knit stitches, so the size, and that is dictated by the space between the hooks. That space allows the loops on the hooks to be a little bit bigger, which means that your stitches end up being a little bit bigger. So as far as this tool goes, my review is that it's great. It works pretty well. It does have a learning curve. I spent probably an hour fiddling around with it. At first, I got really frustrated and decided I wasn't going to use it. And then was like, no, I bought it. I need to try to figure this out. So I kept working away at it. Once I realized the size was too small, I was like, okay, so that makes sense. It's just really tight. And then from there, just trying to figure out the mechanics of it and to see if I could make it work, even though it is technically too small and the hooks are too close together for this size of yarn. And it did work. It made a pretty tight band, as I showed you. So use the correct size for your project. But yeah, overall, great tool. Thank you, Autumn, for designing this because it makes knitting the Icord band really easy. One thing that I would say as far as the learning process, I think this would be true even if I had the all-purpose size, is that these little arms, the little flaps that go up and down, these guys here, these guys, sometimes they get caught and then the little hooks are a little bit sharp, so they get caught and can split the yarn. So as you're working, work fairly slowly so you don't get all tangled up. And then the other thing that I observed was that when you lay the yarn over top to create your loops, if you can leave a good amount of looseness in there, don't pull tight, that will help it to pull through without straining the yarn. And also, you want the loops on the bar to sit behind those arms so that they lift up the arms, and then the yarn coming from your yarn ball is under the hooks so that when you pull through, you're getting the correct loops through. So I'll say that again. The yarn here that I loop around needs to fit in the hooks up here like this, and then these little arms lift or kind of ramp the stitches that are already on the hook up and over the hooks so that they can slide off. So you load and unload in one motion. If you're working on a project that has an Icord edge, I highly recommend this. I'm going to put a link to this tool in the description below. I found it a little bit difficult to find online a version that was higher quality, and this one is pretty nice. I'll also link the instructional video that goes step by step on how to use this. It had an instruction on how to make Icord cord and also how to do the Icord binding. So if you want more details on how to do it, then you can watch that video. Thanks for joining me for a cozy crafting session. If you want another video to keep you company while you work on your works in progress, check out this video. Until next time, happy making. Bye.